Today we're making your own baguette. All you're gonna need for this recipe is flour, water, salt, and some active dry yeast. It's easier to use a large bowl to start with. So we're gonna start by putting water in the bowl. That's about half a cup of water, right? Just half a cup. Then we're gonna measure out 1 cup of flour. To be honest, I just eyeball it more or less. And it does the trick. And then all you're gonna need is just a little pinch of dry yeast, right? So I think it's like 1/8 or so. That's literally, I just sprinkled a tiny little bit. That's literally all you need. You don't need much at all. So if I just mix these ingredients together, you know, coarsely, it doesn't have to be, you know, perfect or anything, just. Oh, get that flour that's kind of on the side here. I'm just using a fork. I mean, you can use whatever you want, whatever your preference is, but yeah. And you know, this stage is rough, so you don't really have to worry about anything. You're not trying to make anything perfect. You're not trying to knead the bread or anything like that. You're just roughly mixing the ingredients together. So for the time being, I'm just going to cover this up with some, you know, plastic foil. So all you got to do is let this sit overnight. We'll pick it up tomorrow where we left off. Once the ingredients are mixed together, this is what it's going to look like. Right? This is our starter. As you can see, it's bubbling to the surface. Now this starter has been sitting for, I don't know, more than 12 hours. Probably around 16, so it's probably just enough. I normally would probably let it sit a little bit longer, 24 hours or so. We're just going to add all the ingredients to the starter. The active dry yeast. Salt. And the water. If you're using a bread machine, then go ahead and add the ingredients just like I've just done to the bowl, but add them to the tub of the bread machine. And turn on the knead cycle for, you know, 10-15 minutes. It does not have to be fully kneaded. You can leave it coarse like you're about to see with what I'm doing right now. And then you'll let it sit in the bread maker for 45 minutes, let it rise, puff it down, and in another 45 minutes, of course with the lid closed. But for now, we're just gonna do it in the bowl because that's kind of what I have to work with. I mean, what we're doing is essentially kneading the bread the way the machine does. Just maybe not quite as effectively, efficiently, and thoroughly as the machine would. That's okay. We're not a machine. We are human. See, now now it's gotten awfully sticky, and it's getting harder and harder to do by hand. So, given that I'm not a full-time baker, I'm just going to leave this for now. Leave this coarse, very coarse, because it really doesn't have to be, perfectly kneaded. So for now, I'm going to let this sit for 45 minutes or so. I'm going to cover it up. Okay, so it's been 45 minutes and the dough has been rising. All right, as you can see, it's kind of spread out and a little bit more alive, shiny. So I'm just going to puff it down a little bit and stir it one more time. If you're doing this in the bread machine, you would probably just knead it once or twice. Or not, well, just for a few seconds. We're just trying to make sure it's fully activating. I can smell the yeast, so I know it's working. So we'll cover that up for another 45 minutes or so. And then see what happens. Let's do this. Stay back, kitty. Alright, so the dough has been sitting for a grand total of an hour and a half since we mixed it with the starter. Here's what it looks like. It's kind of swollen a little bit, it's inflated, it's, done its thing. Now, if you had kneaded this in the machine, it would have probably a little firmer, a bit more of a firmer texture to it, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that right now. What we are going to worry about is cut this into 3 parts, because we're going to make 3 baguettes that are all about the same length. Then we're going to use the surface with the flour to shape the baguette, and each one at a time. I want to show you also, I have prepared a pan here. Before we start, this is just a straight oven pan, and I've cut little strips of parchment paper that we're going to put each baguette on. That's so, of course, it's so it doesn't stick. But I'm cutting individual strips because that way there's no extra on the parchment paper, because we're going to be baking at 450, and this parchment paper isn't rated for that kind of temperature, so it can kind of burn the edges and things, and we don't really want that. So first thing we're going to do is to prepare the surface. All right. So got some flour here, and I'm just gonna. Obviously, you want a nice flat surface. A butcher's block, the new one will work perfectly well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the knife and cut, about 1/3 of this flour, or of this dough. Okay, this should be enough for the first one. And there you go. Put a bit of flour on it so it's not sticking. And a bit more. And we're off. To shape the baguette, believe it or not, you don't really need to have this perfect at all. So you're going to stretch out that first bit of dough like a rectangle like this. And then we're going to fold it over 3 times on itself. And that's it. So first one, you fold to about 1/3. To about 1/3. You don't need more than that. Right? And you press it in with my fingers. You see how I've done that here? Right? And then you turn it around. Turn around. You do the same thing. Again, about 1/3. But that third will kind of fold into the halfway line here. Right? So you're kind of making a halfway line and pressing it in once again. Right. You don't want too much flour because you want it to stick, but you want enough flour so that it's not really, sticking all over your hands. Like you can see it here. Like I said, I should have floured my hands before I grabbed the dough. That would have been a little bit easier, smarter, but that's okay. And then the final step is you fold it in half like this. And you see the edge here, So the crease, right, is on this side. Now, instead of using my fingers, I'm going to use the palm of my hand to kind of push it down gently and nice and like softly like this. It doesn't have to be smooshed, right, like totally, but you want it to kind of, yeah, you want it to be folded. This is basically what it comes down to. So now I have this nice straight strip of dough. It's a fat snake. And I'm just kind of stretching it out a little bit. Right? It doesn't have to be stretched out all that far, but just a little bit. I don't know, 15 inches or something. Once we have that, what we're going to do is transfer it. Put a little bit more flour on it. Right? Oops. Before you do that, just put a little bit more flour on the surface of it, because we're going to let this this dough rise a little bit. It's going to expand, but we're going to cover it up, and you don't want it to be sticking to anything. So I'm going to transfer the dough now to the tray, and just like that. Yep. And you see this is a nicely shaped baguette already on the tray, just laying there. Just leave it. It's ready. So we're going to repeat this process 3 times now for each baguette. Again, making sure I have enough flour here, and that my hands are floured before I try and cut into this very sticky dough. So here's this dough once again. Get some flour on it so it's not too sticky. There you go. Loosely shaped into a kind of a rectangle. Right? Again, this does not have to be perfect in any way, just kind of rough shape. Repeat the process. I fold over 1/3 and press it in, press it down, turn it around. And this one, I'm pressing the other half so that it folds right over the half here. And then you fold the front bit over, right? You see? So it's like this, but on its side. And again, I'm now pressing with my palms, not my fingers, just my palms, just gently pressing it in. And now I'm going to stretch it out just a little bit, just to kind of maximize the length so that it fits as long as possible in the pan. And I'm adding some flour so that it won't stick when I cover it up to rise again. If I bring this over to the tray, I'm going to put this on the parchment paper. Right, about 1/3. Second fold, also over. This time folding into the center line, nice and tight. There you go. So remember, right, it's like this, but on its side. And now I fold down with my palms. And now we have a nice kind of folded crease in the middle. And I stretch it out just a little bit, just to kind of even out the dough. Get a little bit more flour so it doesn't stick when I let it rise. Tray. My tray that's ready to go. And as a final step, what I'm going to do is take a bread towel. This is a linen bread towel. And I'm just going to cover it up. And that'll give it a chance to rise for however long you want, 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. Just so that the bread kind of expands a little bit more. In a few minutes, I'm going to turn on the oven to 450 and let that start warming up. Because you're going to want an oven that's been warm for a while. You don't want it to just turn it on and get warm to 450 and put it in straight away. You want to let it, really heat up the oven. So, as the oven is warming up, I'm going to put a pan. It's got water in it. A little bit. And I put that in the oven so that it heats up with the oven, because I want that pan to be nice and hot before we put the bread in, because we're going to put boiling water in that pan and it's going to steam up the oven. The steam is what's going to give us the nice crust on the bread. The oven is basically warm. It's 450 degrees. As you can see, the water in the little pan I've put in here is already steaming, which is good. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to add a little bit more water that I've already pre-boiled. Alright, because you really want it to, and you can also pour some in the bottom of the pan. You see that? Alright, so let that steam for a moment. So it's been about 45 minutes, and as we shall see, the bread has kind of expanded a little bit. It hasn't risen so much, but kind of expanded. But basically this bread is now ready to go in the oven, so I'm going to take it and now I'm ready to put the bread in for approximately 23 minutes. If you leave it a bit longer, like 25 or so, you'll get a crispier crust. If you leave it 21 minutes or so, you'll get a very soft crust. Like the whole baguette will be very soft and fluffy. It won't have hardened so much. But if you leave it in longer, those extra few minutes between 21 to 25 minutes make all the difference. So at 25 minutes, you'll get a much crispier crust. And if you leave the baguette in longer after that, with the door open and let it cool down inside the oven, it'll be even crispier. So all depends on how crispy you like your baguettes. I'm setting a timer for about 23 minutes because it's usually a nice kind of balance between crispy and not, and then I'll check and see how it's doing. Look at that. These baguettes have been in there for 23 minutes. And it's important to let that cool down. If you're using a glass dish, you absolutely have to let it cool down, otherwise the glass will shatter if you try and pour water on it or something. So the baguette's been cooling for just a minute, and but I just want to show you kind of the result. It's kind of hot still. That's okay. But look at this. Look at this. It's still steaming, and it's nice and soft inside. It's got a light, crunchy exterior. You see this? Oh, look at that. Excellent crust. Very soft and nice and warm. You know, it rolls up if you smush it together. Look at that. It goes right back to dough. Absolutely astounding. This is the kind of baguette that I wish you would get in the supermarket. See, look at the bottom here. The bottom of it's nice and brown as well. The top, it's covered in flour, so it's a bit harder to see, but it's not quite this dark. But look at that. It's just a nice, wonderful texture. Wonderful texture. Soft and just crunchy on the outside. And that was exactly 23 minutes in the oven. If I left it in there a little bit longer, I would get an even harder crust. But as the crust gets harder and harder, the softer part kind of gets less and less. So, it's kind of a balancing act. And if you only had it 21 minutes, this crust would be really soft. By the time it cools down, it would be so soft that, if you're worried about your teeth or anything like that, it's not a problem. Easy to bite into. But look at that. It's just it's got that kind of shell, crust of a shell, and nice and soft inside. Oh. Absolutely excellent. 2 thumbs up, in fact. I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up. Because this is just absolutely perfect. Absolutely awesome baguette. So now if you cover them up, right, they'll hold for a day or so without and when you're cooling down, it's good to cover it up because it'll maintain some of the moisture, keep it soft. The baguette will last a good day or so like this if it's just covered up with a towel or in a brown paper bag. But if you want it to last a little bit longer, just put it in a Ziploc bag or something plastic once it cools down, and it'll last for a couple days. So I'm gonna make myself some lunch. Here's the piece of baguette that you just saw me dig into. Cut it open with a knife. Look at that. Oh, it's still warm. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And that's gonna be my lunch. So happy eating. Crunchy and soft at the same time. So I want to get myself another piece here. Put some jam on here. If it were a bit cooler, I'd put butter, but since it's melting all over the place. Absolutely delicious. Excellent, excellent, excellent.